Welcome, Warriors. That's right. It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is Cyber Warrior Studios, and I know you're ready and excited for a brand new episode of Security Happy Hour. Got an amazing guest coming on. It's actually been a long time since me and him talked, so it's going to be great having him back on the show. We got a lot of things to talk about. Mainly, you pick your own topic beyond what we have going on, and we'll be happy to hear from you. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. And we're back. See? 10 seconds. That's all it ever takes. Joe, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Oh, fantastic. Finally, at the end of the week, finally made it.
This is a brutal week. You know? It's crazy, man.
Joe South is with us, host of the Security Unfiltered Podcast. And this evening, we are going to be talking all things Q4, going into 2025. And other various random topics, because that's my show and we tend to rant sometimes.
Man, it's an interesting time right now in the job market, I feel like.
I think the job market is one of the biggest and most challenging things beyond a lot of the things that we've talked about, like even on this show. I feel bad for people breaking in, or trying to break in, rather. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Like, what is your thoughts on kind of where things are right now?
Yeah, it's challenging, to say the least. Like, it seems like what's going on is that these companies are either just straight up not hiring anyone until 2025, or they're posting a bunch of fake roles to make it look like they're hiring people, to make it look like they're not doing as bad as they actually are. And the reason why I say that is because I've talked to a lot of recruiters, and they actually tell me exactly that. They're like, the job market is so messed up right now that they actually have to confirm with companies that these are real roles that they should be pitching to candidates. And I mean, like, it's insane. I've heard of people, that I know very well have been applying to hundreds of roles, and they don't get a single call. They don't get a single email, and they're like more experienced than me. Like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of me thinks I understand the recruiting industry, but part of me feels like that's like why I used to not like it, but I actually kind of like how the company I work for does things, and that they have their own recruiters. Like, that's their sole purpose is to be a recruiter.
Yeah.
So like they go out there and find when we're posting a job, they go out there and find the candidates for it, so that I'm not out there hunting, during the workday or off hours or whatever, trying to find someone to fit the bill. So, I mean, and I've gotten some pretty good people from that, but it's just, at least then it's a legitimate like job, because the company itself is the one sending recruiters to find you.
Right. Yeah, it's man, it's crazy right now. And I don't know. I've seen, just from the cloud security perspective, I've seen a lot more companies pushing for Azure experience. And it seems like companies are getting into this stupid hole that that we've seen, right, for the past, decade or so with cybersecurity overall, of, oh, you need to have Azure experience. You need to have 5-7 years of Azure experience. We don't care if it's AWS. We don't care if it's GCP. We don't care if you have the CCSP cert, right? Like, you need this cloud specifically. And whenever companies say that to me, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It's literally a different language. I can go and Google what's this thing in AWS and Azure, right? And it tells me the name, and oh, guess what? It's the exact same principles that I'm going to use in Azure as I'm going to in AWS. There's nothing different.
I have a counterpoint to that, and it's only because I'm dealing with it at this moment. So I'm technically supposed to be a manager. However, when you don't have all the people you need, you end up being an engineer.
Yeah.
And I am one of those people that till my last breath, I will tell people I despise the cloud and I can't stand Microsoft. However, that is the biggest ticket for us right now. And I have ventured into the realm of Azure over the past 4 years of my career, maybe 5. And it's yes, the underlying foundations are the same. And I feel the same way about any SIM, any EDR, any whatever. Like foundationally, they're all the same. However, when you're looking at like something like Azure, you've got things like Defender for Cloud, which then like when you're looking at Defender for Server, to install that and get that running is different than as it is for Defender for Endpoint, which is
Right.
different than something else. So unlike something like a CrowdStrike, when you push that out, it's the same way across the board. You may have different policy sets based on architecture, but the deployment's the same way. There is no difference
Mm.
because you don't have a Microsoft backed like DFC that's like, oh yeah, if your server is in Azure tenant and Azure cloud, I can talk to it automatically. Just say you want to push Defender for Server and it just goes.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the biggest difference is that with AWS, you have to understand the manual process to installing all this. When you're dealing with clients that are like true Microsoft shops, you better know how Azure works in and out and how Defender can be messed up.
Hmm.
Like if it's disabled, why is it disabled? It's baked into the operating system how to get disabled.
Right.
So like you have to have that knowledge. Um, I think that's the biggest difference. Is one AWS you can still rely on your foundations of how things work, how operating systems and deployments work. When you're in Azure dealing with a full Microsoft shop, throw that out the window because it's completely
Hmm.
different.
That's interesting. Do you think that like the documentation that they have would supplement, that difference in knowledge?
No, their documentation. That's the other problem I have with them is their documentation is trash
Hmm.
because they'll change. Look at it this way. So when you went when everything was on premise, you had Active Directory and SCCM. Everybody knew those terms. Everybody understood those terms. Then they went to the cloud, and it was Azure Active Directory. Okay, that makes sense. It's Active Directory in a cloud. But they got rid of GPOs. GPOs no longer existed when you were using Azure AD. Now it's roles and a bunch of other things. Like they completely, the complexity went through the roof on how to do all that stuff. And then you have SCCM got a promotion to Mecca, but yet nobody says Mecca
Hmm.
unless you're on that team and that's your sole purpose in life. I still call it. I don't call it Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. No, it's SCCM. It's
Hmm.
always going to be SCCM.
Yeah.
And that, but they don't always update their documentation for like a year or two. And so, like now, you have everything that's like Entra ID. I still call it Azure ID. And like you talk to someone and they're like, "You mean Entra? What the hell is Entra?" Oh yeah, that's right. They renamed it. And so, like certain things, when they want to rebrand, those will keep up. So, like when they rebranded Active Directory from Azure AD to Entra ID, oh, they were quick to change that.
Hmm.
But their Defender XDR portal, they still will say, like, you'll look at certain documentation. Oh, go to the Azure Security Center. You mean Defender XDR or security.microsoft.com?
Hmm.
Like, it's not the Azure Security Center. It's a Defender portal. You call it
Oh.
that. That makes sense to me. But, like, it's not. And then it's so conflated on how they do policies, too, because it's like, are you using Intune or Mecca or GPO or something else? I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm deploying it. I don't know what to tell you. I'm not the sysadmin here. I'm the one that just says, hey, I want these policies. Where do I go to enforce them?
That's interesting. Hmm.
But again, foundationally, they're all the same.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of operating. But Microsoft, I don't think the documentation keeps up with things that happen.
Hmm.
Um,
Maybe the last time I was actually reviewing the documentation while being in Azure, it was like, level with each other. And
yeah, because
because I
they
mean, that was
do.
before they went with Entra and everything else.
Yeah, because they were for a while. Like you could go there and be good, but like so, and their support also frustrates me
Hmm.
because It's like if Defender gets disabled, 9 times out of 10, it's like a GPO or a Meccan policy or something that got pushed out that disabled it. The only way you can disable it is to literally tell Microsoft to disable Defender for server.
Hmm.
And when you call Microsoft support, they're like, "Oh, there's got to be a problem." No one said, "Look at the GPO." We talked to Microsoft support and a bunch of other people. So it was like everything we're doing isn't working. They're like, "Oh, you got to run these DISM scripts and fix the server and the hard drive. There's missing operating system files and this and the third." Oh nay nay. Oh nay nay. No, you looked at a GPO. We did a client analyzer on it, and it pulled the GP result, and legitimately in that GP result said disable Defender. And so every time we enabled it, it disabled it. And was
Wow.
like, "Nope, no, homie, no, around this." But no one said to check that. Microsoft itself didn't say to check it.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So, like, that's where that, and I know some of these support teams are really good. I've dealt with quite a few of them, but I think they are still in the same boat of if they get lost, they'll go to the documentation. And I googled disabled. I googled failed extension installs from Defender for Cloud. Nothing said check GPOs.
Huh. Interesting.
Like, only reason we found out about it is because my new senior engineer has actually lived in Azure since probably its inception.
Yeah.
For years. And he was like, check the GPO. See, right there, it says disabled. I was like, you son of
wow. Well, hopefully he solved it for you like pretty early on.
So we're down to the wire. I just hired him. He just came on a couple weeks ago, got into the system, was on calls this past 2 weeks. After we did everything, he got on a call like yesterday, the day before, and he was like, check this for me, please. Just please. Please check this. And we're like, well, we just check it. Again, let me see it. And he looked, he goes, it's right here. Right here, guy.
Jeez. Wow.
But I think, even looking at the job market, I've always stood on you should be, if you know the foundations, what I will say is I don't think if someone is a solid, complete Microsoft shop and they are looking for a senior, I don't blame them for looking for that type of, hey, I need you to know Azure in and out. Because you're going into a senior role. Now, if you're going into a junior or mid-level role, you can get away with, because you're not going to be the front man, right? You're not going to be the client-facing, got to know everything person that's being hired. They expect you to have to learn on the fly. So I think getting away with AWS, GCP, stuff like that, because you do understand the foundations. And then you can learn from a senior or somebody else that's been doing it and lived in that space a little bit longer. But as a senior, if you're dealing with clients or an organization that is solely Azure, I can understand why that's what they're looking for. But then you run into a problem. Now I know what you're running. And that's always been a social engineering tip for hackers. Go look at what they're putting on their job description.
Right.
I need someone that knows Defender. Oh, that means you're running Defender. I need someone that knows, Palo Alto firewalls. Oh, I know what you're running. I know what I have to bypass. And so
that's a good
you're a
point.
targeted entity, you're targeted.
Yeah. Yeah, you're doing all the work for the hackers, basically. Mm-hmm. You're doing all their recon for them.
Yeah, and so that's why, like, we've tried, especially as like when you work in the MSSP space, you try to be more generic, or overarching, right? So, we'll go with like multiple tool sets of all the same thing. Right? So your EDRs, especially because we can support a few, it'll be like, hey, I need you to know one of 3 of these, right? Defender, CrowdStrike, Cortex. I forget what their EDR platform is called, but XDR or something like that. I need you to know at least one of those. And then it's like, oh, okay. And so, and again, though, that's your junior mid-level role. But those senior roles, a lot of times within an organization, they need someone that can hit the ground running and is not going to have to take a week to learn Defender.
Yeah.
Sentinel. Let's be fair. Sentinel is just Splunk on crack. It is
Oh yeah.
literally, they love their SQL queries. I don't care, call it KQL, whatever. It's SQL. Freaking SQL. And I despise not having a UI that I just go there and click and be like, oh yeah, I need to find this. No, oh no. You better know how to call from tables.
Oh God. Yeah, it's I feel like it's a space that like there's a lot of improvement that can take place. These
Mhm.
cloud providers, especially Microsoft, they get you like 80, 85% of the way there. But like you said, right? I just want a console I can click around in. Right. And they're like, nope, you got to go and do this SQL query against the table, that has all your data in it. Hopefully, you know what you're looking for.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, but we're so used to the other way. We're
dude.
so
I
used to
love
being able to
logarithm
do
and
the other way.
McAfee ESM. People like, you
Oh
like
yeah.
Mac? Hell yeah, dude. That would baseline every single type of log I got coming in. And if I wanted
Especially
to create an alert, the deviations, that was cake.
yeah. Especially when you had it like sized properly and it was
Uh,
running and everything, you know. Who
like,
bought Logarithm? Was it IBM?
was begin with an E. Wasn't IBM.
Extra Hop?
IBM has QRadar. And actually, I think someone may be buying them. But
Was it Extra Hop?
no, I'll have to go look. I was talking to them because I used to have a bunch of friends in sales, and they ended up being let go
Hmm.
after the merger. Exabeam, that's who it was.
Oh, I forget that they're even a thing.
Well, Exabeam is now the cloud. They took over as the cloud SIM, and Logarithm is maintained, from to my understanding, the whole Logarithm on premise kind of indexer and everything they run is still going to be there. Now, whether or not they keep the Logarithm name for that platform, I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, they're utilizing that same technology for the on-prem still, because Exabeam apparently, from what I understand, had a better cloud setup
Hmm.
than Logarithm did. But yeah, the Logarithm was another one. It took some getting used to, but once I got used to it, I was like, this is actually pretty sweet.
Yeah.
The hardest part as an engineer was creating reports. Other than
Yeah.
that, ingesting everything and making sure it all worked, creating rules and alerts,
Right.
cake.
Yeah. It was that was like uh, that was the great part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like I like that part because you could really tune it. You could really dial that thing in, and build off of it, have your whole sock built around it and whatnot. That was a great solution.
Yep, yep. Like Logarithm, I used it as a multi-tenant, and McAfee, both of them.
Hmm.
And I think that's the other thing though that people don't understand is like I've worked for a lot of managed service providers, and when I was a SIM engineer for Presidio, that was probably the best thing we had going for us. Um, as an engineer and analyst, is all of our stuff, unless it was co-managed, where the company wanted to own the hardware. Um, Most of it was multi-tenant, so I could legitimately go into McAfee ESM UI, and I'd see all the different companies, all the different things that we had to do, and
Hmm.
all that they had their own hardware space, but it was just different. And the only way that I'm aware of, you may know more than me on this, and I know my senior engineer knows way more than me on this. Um, to do multi-tenancy like that, where you're not switching, like I don't have to log into another tenant,
Right.
right? Like it's just there. It's something like Lighthouse or something like that that brings it
Yeah.
all under one umbrella. Um, for Azure, and I'm like, that's another purchase for a company, which means we'd have to buy. Like, so I don't know, man. I think the cloud people are getting too complacent,
Hmm.
way too complacent. And they're trying to skimp on cost. They're like, well, it's in the cloud. I can get away with 2 gigs of RAM. Can you really? Like, are you
Right.
sure about that?
Yeah. Can't run anything on 2 gigs of RAM.
Not anymore.
I don't even think about it. I got like 64 in my desktop right now.
Dude, I think that's what I got in mine, actually, when I built it. Because I built
I was
mine.
like, I might as well use all the slots.
Yeah. I built mine like no, actually 3 years ago. 2 or 3 years ago. And yeah, I think it's 64 gigs. And so I wanted an upgraded graphics card. So to get my 3070, it was back when graphics cards were in short supply.
Yep.
And so I ended up getting one of those Newegg, like, deal of the day. Like, you had to be chosen to make the
Yeah.
purchase. And it just so happened, like, I ended up with an extra 32 gigs of RAM that I'm not even using because the timings don't match what I have in there.
Yeah.
I was like, I ain't even trying to mess with that now. I use everything I use is the same timing, the same specs. Like, I will literally buy
Yeah.
64 gigs of the exact same specs.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a 3080 for free back in 2020. A vendor got it for me. It fell off the back of a truck somehow.
You lucky son of a.
Yeah.
I was rocking the AMD when I first built mine because they were easier to come by and they were like $100.
Yeah. I got what was it? It was like the 12900K. I think that's what I got right now. I'm already starting to like kind of eye things that I'm going to build with the 5000 series graphics cards, because I mean, it's a great excuse. Well, like,
I
why
don't
not?
want to spend $600 on a graphics card.
I don't know. Why not use this opportunity? It's a good write off.
Look, if I could get NVIDIA to sponsor me, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Right.
I'm like, look, I will advertise this. Get out of your graphics cards.
Yeah.
Just send me one for free.
I've had a couple people on from NVIDIA. I should hit them up.
You
But they
should,
did
man.
they did tell me, like, at the end of the at the end of the podcast, they were like, "Oh yeah, just letting you know, like, we can only get the graphics cards like the day before they come out, and they're only allowed for us. Like, it's literally one per person."
That's when you look
Like,
at them and
wow.
go, well, you're not going to need that one.
Yeah, you
Got
don't
yours
need that.
last year. Can I get that, please?
Yeah.
Or send me the old one.
Yeah.
I will literally take a model back.
Right. They probably
Still
like
better
have
than what
like
I
a
got.
they like accidentally send you like a H100 or whatever it is.
Have you ever seen the price of those Quadras?
Oh, that
Dude,
start at
that's
like
like 2
10 grand.
computer purchases for me, man. The top of the line CAD card
They
is like
start at like
3
10
grand.
grand. Yeah.
Is it 10?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I was looking at them a while ago.
That's where they
Whenever
start.
I knew nothing about graphics cards. I was like, well, this one's more expensive. It's got to be good. And my one buddy was like, don't ever buy that for gaming. I was
Yeah.
like, why not? He goes, it is not made for that.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
It's kind of weird to think that, right? Like, it's a purpose-built GPU. When I think of GPU, my head immediately goes towards gaming, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
if it's a GPU, it's for gaming.
Yep.
But if you run that thing for gaming, it's like, good luck, you'll get away with Counter-Strike. Like, that's
Yeah.
about it,
The best thing that and the crazy is that thing is made for numbers. So I think that would be on par right now with. Do you think it could have handled Bitcoin mining back when a lot of people were using the 1080s?
I would think so.
Because you figure everybody had a 1080. That's why like a lot of graphics cards sold out. Is because people bought like all the good 1080s and were like building these
Yeah.
Bitcoin mining rigs.
Yeah.
Now they just borrow people's cloud space. They're like, I'm just gonna hack you and drop a
Right.
miner right here.
Yeah, I got a buddy that at the beginning of COVID, he was mining Ethereum.
Yeah.
He had like 8 1080s, mining it and whatnot. He had way more Ethereum than he's willing to admit to me because he sold it all like when it was, it was going up, but it wasn't at the peak. And like,
Yeah.
he still to this day won't even tell me how many he had and whatnot. He's like, no, it's an embarrassing amount. I'm not telling you.
Dude, I have a buddy that lives off of. He doesn't live off of it, but he makes some excess cash off of Bitcoin mining, or at least he
Oh
was. I
yeah.
don't know if he still does it. And he had the rigs and everything set up, and it turned out the way his rigs were built, even with the power draw, he was making enough to pay his power bill, all his utilities, and I think his mortgage. And so the rest of his money was just money.
Yeah, it was just sitting there collecting.
Yeah, and you figure as
Wow.
Bitcoin kept going up,
Oh my god.
he just made more money every month. So like it's one of those things that
I was just talking to some buddies about this of how like back in like 2014, right? I literally remember like looking at Bitcoin, it was like $200 or whatever. And
Yeah.
I had $5,000 in my account, the most I'd ever seen in my account before as a college student. And I was like, why the hell would I get this Bitcoin, right? When it's about to be outlawed at any point in time. I'm gonna go buy a TV because me and my roommates need to go play some video games. That sounds like the smart financial decision. I literally went and spent, $2,500 on a TV. Thought I was balling out of control, right? Spent the rest on like beer, and a cell phone bill.
Important stuff.
And for sure, like that would have been that would have been life changing. Like, my God, I'd be totally different. I'd be in a totally different place. I'd be
Dude,
in the studio, not
I
my
looked
house.
at it when crypto first came out. I looked at it as not a scam, but just another kind of untraceable currency that's never going to be accepted to buy any. Like,
Right, right.
I
And
was
I
like, this,
thought for
I'm never
sure it
going
was
to be
going to
able
be
to
shut
use
down.
this. I'm never going to be able to cash it out and use it.
Right.
So it was like buying tokens to do illegal shit. Like,
Yeah.
that's how I looked at Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
That was the primary purpose. That was all
Yeah.
that there was. You bought it to do that, or you bought it to say you had it.
Yeah. To be one of the cool kids.
Yeah. It
And so,
wasn't like a thing that was like even talked about, in investing or anything like that. Like,
no.
if
Like,
you
I
bought
remember when
Bitcoin, people
Bitcoin
looked at you
came
like you were
out,
an idiot.
and it was like $2.
Yeah.
Like, I was there for its inception. I saw it. I heard about it. I'm like, that's just something hackers are using.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even get your money back on something like that? Like, it's
Right.
worthless.
And
Man.
and another thing was like, okay, well, it's really difficult to get, right? So like back then there wasn't any exchanges, there was none of that.
You couldn't just
You
go
had
on
to like,
Robinhood and just freaking
yeah, you couldn't do any of
buy
that.
it.
You had to like really figure out how to do it, and then you put it on a USB drive because there wasn't even wallets.
Yeah.
I mean, like back then there wasn't even crypto wallets for
Yep.
them, right? So you put it on an encrypted USB drive, pray to God that you never lose that password, right?
Yeah.
And then wait until you have the ability to sell it, which wouldn't be for another 5 years after that,
Like,
6
can you
years.
imagine how much money you made in 5 years just by getting like 3 coins?
That's very defeating. It's
Dude,
very defeating.
I look at it now because I got a buddy from the army, and I don't know if his account got hacked or if he's legitimately kind of in the crypto investing market now and advertising all this stuff. It's been a while since we talked, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, man, there were so many times I was using my CPU on my laptops to mine Litecoin because that Monero and Litecoin were the only ones that really you could get anything from a CPU.
Yeah.
And then as I started buying GPUs for my desktops, I started dealing with trying to mine Bitcoin and Ethereum, but it just never seemed worth it to me because by the time, like, I never even got to the point where I would make money from Bitcoin or Ethereum. Like, I don't even think I
Yep.
ever got close to half a coin, let
Yeah.
alone a coin. But Litecoin and Monero, I had some saved up and I invested for some more. Same with Ethereum. I invested a little bit. But, when you're married with 5 kids and you start going broke because you ain't making any money yet, like,
Yeah.
between the military and just the other crap jobs that I've had when prices start to skyrocket, you're just like, well, got to make money somewhere, sell it.
Yeah.
And then the prices go up even more and you're like, son of
Yeah.
6 more months and I'd had another $500.
Yeah. At this point, I should like start an investing newsletter just called Inverse Joe. Because like, and I'm in a group chat with some buddies of mine, and they literally like really emphasize this. They're like, if you're ever going to buy or sell something, let us know because we're going to do the opposite. And I have made them so much money because it doesn't matter what I do, it goes the other way.
That is awesome.
Yeah. I'm over here, I'm doing a lot of research, right? Weeks of research. If my employer ever found out, they'd let me go, right? I'm doing so much research and I'm like, all right, now's a good buy time, right? Put like everything that I can into, Cardano, for instance,
Right.
right? $2.30, $2, right? And then it just freaking crashes to 17 cents. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, man, can't tell my wife.
Yeah, man. I just look at it. But you know what's funny? And since this is a security podcast, I am going to bring this back to that because I think we have seen the same thing with tool sets and technologies. And I think we're going to continue to see it going forward with AI, where companies look at the massive layoffs we've had since I don't know if they want to call us in a recession or whatever, but since
Yeah.
the cost of living's gone up, inflation's through the roof. Companies aren't paying people; they're laying people off, and of course, IT and security are always the first to go. Let's keep the bare minimum just to make the blanky lates blink. So, I think they're investing so much in AI, in machine learning, and behavioral analytics, and like thinking, oh, we're going to be good. We just need like 3 people to watch the screens. I think that is going to be to the detriment of many, many, many organizations
Oh
here in the
yeah.
next year.
Yeah, I feel like, after like talking to a couple people from Nvidia, they they said that they feel like personally, this is them individually, not as Nvidia
Right.
themselves, right? But they're saying that they think that companies have like too lofty goals and too short of a time span, right? Like those
Mhm.
sorts of things where AI offsets like a head count on the security team. Yeah, it'll happen eventually. But 5 to 10 years, it probably isn't. But these companies are looking at AI and they're even being sold it, right? They're being sold and told, "Oh, hey, this is going to eliminate these 2 headcounts, right? For the
Yeah.
price of a quarter of one," right? And companies are going to start jumping on it. Like,
Well, that's the marketing teams. This is where we as security professionals, um, we can't win because
yeah.
if you work for those developers, if you work for like the teams at CrowdStrike or Microsoft, like these security teams that preach AI and da 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 da. Like this goes back to when Cylance was first released. Cylance was one of the
Mm,
first AI, right, or machine learning, whatever term they wanted to put on it, EDRs out there. It was one of the first EDRs.
yeah.
And people are like, oh, I hate Cylance. It's like, well, why? Because I installed it and it didn't stop anything. We ended up getting a breach. Did you configure it?
Yeah.
Well, no, I just installed. They just said I had to install it, and this isn't antivirus, my guy. Like you
Yeah.
actually have to have policies in place to stop things. And they're like, so like I think people are looking at it thinking they can get rid of a head count by bringing. No, no, no. You're just substituting a head count.
Yeah.
You're literally going to substitute somebody who configures all this, like that um, triages all this for somebody who configures it all so that the machine can triage because
Right.
you still need that personal element. And they're being sold this, hey, install, we'll set up all your policies, you're fine. You're good to go. You don't have, you need one person to look at your logs. You're fine.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like that makes no logical sense. And I had this conversation with Hacker Valley Studio about a year or two ago now. It's been a while. Because they brought up AI, and I said, nowhere in the next 10 to 15 years do I see insecurity humans being replaced. You
Yeah.
need the human element. You need that middleman that's going to look at it and say this is configured wrong, or this is a false positive, or whatever the case may be. I do. I think to your point, that companies are selling. They are selling a diamond when it's really cubic zirconia. Like
Yeah.
it is not a diamond at all.
Yeah. What do you think what do you think about like these automated pen test companies, right? That are I'll give them benefit of the doubt, right? I don't know how their solution works internally or anything, but let's assume that it is actually an automated pen test. What do you think about that?
One step above a vulnerability assessment. Should be worth no more than $3,000 because you're literally automating it. You're not doing anything. Um, but you can't replace a red team.
Hmm.
So a pen tester is going to go in there and evaluate things. And again, this gets back to the human element. Yes, a
Right.
pen test, a legitimate pen test, not an automated pen test. A legitimate pen test is going to take longer. You're going to do more research. They're going to do more to like see if they can social engineer you. Is phishing on the table? Is it not on the table? I think if you're taking all of the social engineering element out of it, so phishing and data scraping and just a bunch of other things, and just making it purely, hey, we're going to scan, do some research, see what we can find, then yeah, run Metasploit, see what you can do, give them a report, go about your merry way.
Right.
But for companies that are real about their security and truly want to find the flaws, no, I will never agree with it. You need to be. I mean, I'll agree, and again, I don't even agree with it for audit purposes. I despise the way they check the box on audits. Like, yeah, I got a pen test. You
Yeah.
did. You had someone check your most secure network,
Right.
not the one that'll break if you run an Nmap scan.
I worked for a company where my first week there, they sat down with a consultant that was there to like give him he was there to like do an assessment on the security stack and say like these are your gaps, this is the solutions that you should look at, that
Right,
sort of thing, right? Internally, we wanted to use it as an excuse to get a certain tool,
right,
right? So we sat down with this consultant, and I wasn't even talking. It's literally day 2, day 3 for me at this company, and they go and they tell this guy exactly what they want the report to say. I mean word for word. He's writing it right there. He's done at the end of the day, and like that's all that it is. And they did the same thing with the pen test. They did the same thing with tabletop exercises. It's all like theoretical good ideas. Surely no one will be able to breach us this way, right? That sort of stuff.
yeah,
um and it was just I couldn't believe that some companies actually do that.
yeah.
Like as soon as I saw that, I was like, yeah, this probably isn't for me. Like these guys are just trying to do something weird, and I'm not for that.
I like the CISOs that when someone says, "Hey, don't scan this; it'll happen." They're like, "Oh, so we're targeting that because we want to fix it. We
Yeah.
we want to fix these problems." And one of my buddies worked for a company that would that they did that. Within the organization when they had to do a pen test, the CISO or CIO or whatever, she'd be like, "Where are we weakest?" And he'll be like, "Oh, here, here, and here." Make sure that's what the pen testers are isolated to, because they want. It was how you showed that you needed to improve and do more and do things.
Right.
And I think too many executives look at it as, oh, if I don't have any flaws, then I'm going to get promoted, or I'm going to get a bonus, or I'm going to do this. When in reality, no, you're just going to get fired. Like, you're legitimately going to get fired because you're going to. We all know the CISO's the scapegoat or the security
Right.
director or whatever. Like, you're the scapegoat. You're the one that's going to get fired when you can't do the job. When
Someone's
in
head has to
reality,
roll.
yeah, right. When in reality, it's not that they can't do the job; it's they do one of two things. They're either ass kissers and yes men or yes women that'll literally just do anything to please the boss.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh yeah, your company's good, da da da. Or they're too scared because they're
Yeah.
afraid if they say, hey, this is vulnerable, it's their job. They're going to lose their job. But if you're bringing it to their attention and you're getting their sign off as acceptable risk, yeah, let them fire
Yeah.
you. You then have the sign offs and the authority and the legal backing to say, hey, you can't fire me for this. You signed off on it. I made it known. I let you know. It's on you.
Yeah.
You can hold me liable for it.
I think even as like security engineers, right? Individual contributors, like you have to actually have that knowledge to be able to do exactly that. I I I used to work for a place where it was an extremely high paced team, right? We
Mm,
got more done in 1 year than every other team at the organization did in 3 years. And that's like not an overstatement. It was probably more than that. but you have a team of 12 people, all of them are working 80 to 100 hour weeks, for about 50 weeks of the year roughly. You're going to get a lot done. You're
Yeah.
also going to burn out your team. There was several people on my team that went to the hospital because of stress. And they, were for a month off of work and stuff like that. Right. Well, this manager being so high paced, he wanted to do an upgrade on an unstable product that was basically going to crash if we did the upgrade, right? Because he
Yeah.
wanted to meet certain standards and guidelines and whatnot. And at that point, I told him, I was like, I was the lead on the team, and I just told him, no, I'm not doing the upgrade. Like, I'm not doing it. If you have a problem with it, like, you could take it up with someone else, because like, this product is unstable. We haven't tested the patch that you want to put on it, right? We have no clue of if it's going to work or not. The last one failed significantly, caused a P0 in the environment, where we were literally hard down for 3 days.
The
Okay,
last
like,
one caused the CrowdStrike incident.
right, right. And his response to me was, if you don't do the upgrade, like, you're going to be fired. And I said, well, then you might as well just fire me right now, because I'm not going to do it. And on top of that, before I leave, I'm going to send an email to the entire security org, and they're going to know I didn't sanction this upgrade, and I'm now getting fired because I'm not doing the upgrade. And he like immediately backtracked. He's like, oh, well, I guess, we don't have to do that. We don't have to, you know, we don't have to go down that road. I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
we need to at least test this fucking thing before we put it out into production, because it hasn't been tested. And sure enough, literally a week into our testing, the vendor reached out to us, and they were like, hey, by chance, did you upgrade? We heard that you guys were going to upgrade. Did you guys upgrade? I was like, nope. He goes, oh, good, because we just found a massive bug, and it's like a ticking time bomb, basically. And I was like, dude, like, I saved you guys for more headache than you even know right now.
Yeah, and that's um one of the things that, like, people don't understand is engineers. I've been an engineer since 90, or yeah, 90. I ain't that old.
Jeez.
2000. I retired in 17, so 2018 would have been my first sim engineer job in the civilian world. Now, granted, before that, I was also networking and sysadmin and help desk, and you name it. I did everything else, and I did all. I've done Active Directory, and I was working with Nessus and McAfee ESM in the Army and stuff like that. But my first official engineer job out of the Army would have been 2018. And man, like, I am both lucky and unlucky that all of my jobs, with the exception of my very first job, which was for Sheets, have been in MSSPs. Every single one. I would, don't get it wrong, sometimes I'm like, I'd love to work for just one organization. Like, literally just go in and be able to fix the security infrastructure of a company. But as an engineer at an MSSP, like, you don't have that headache of being a fall guy unless you literally piss off a client so bad that they decide to, like, drop you. Like, then you don't. Dude, I use DOS, William. DOS, not Windows 3.1. DOS, my guy. But yeah, I think that is, honestly, MSSPs, unless there's a lot of changing in the organization, a lot of change of structure, if you get in at the right time, man, they are some of the most secure places you can work, because you're not gonna, unless they suck at selling, you're not going to be without a client or a job.
Yeah.
Like, I could have stayed at Presidio forever, except for a buddy of mine called me with more money, and I can break into shit instead of secure shit.
Yeah, that's a direction that I'm starting to dabble in a little bit. Right, is going a little bit more on the offensive, because I'm bored with the defensive side of security. I'm like, man, I need to have some fun. I need to break into something. I need to like tear something up, right? Like I just need
Where
new
do you think?
challenges.
Where do you see beyond automated pen tests? Ultimately, where do you see security going? Like, we know the job market is shit. We know they still can't get their ass out of it, their head out of their ass. Um, but as far as technology finding a way to semi catch up and hopefully stop ransomware, once every 10 times instead of
Hmm.
once every 100, like, where do you see security going in the next year?
Hmm. I think it's only going to get harder, especially since I've talked to a lot of people that are saying that like nation state actors and these hacking groups, they're actively using AI and they're building their own models to create more difficult malware to get into environments, to hack them, to steal everything, right? And so I think it's only going to get more difficult, and so we need to kind of start or like re-engage on our end, potentially like an AI model that does a similar thing but on the defense side, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, look at the environment and just tell me where I should be focusing. What are the hot spots?
But don't you think though at the same time, because look at stuff like Copilot, right? So Microsoft Copilot is out, it's embedded into Azure. Now you can disable it, you don't have to use it, but it's there. Do you think that things like that harvest all the data and all the things about your environment so that it can help fix your environment, but it has to harvest data in order to be able to fix data? Like, do you feel that is more of a security risk than just being able to research and learn and look at what the standard should be?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a security risk. That is for sure. When I saw the Copilot stuff, I was like, "Oh man, guys, can't be doing that." Like you're talking to a lot of paranoid people right now, which
Yeah,
is like the entire security community. Like we're gonna tear you apart for this. Um, I feel like it almost needs to be like a homegrown solution to some extent.
yeah.
Something that just lives in your environment, doesn't talk out to anything else, can be self-sufficient. I think that that's the only way that that works from the blue team side. But I think in general it's only going to be more difficult because like you said, right, the cloud isn't getting any smaller.
Right.
AWS. Okay, so this is a great example. I took my AWS security specialist cert a couple of years ago, right? Came up for renewal. I'm dreading taking this cert again because it was so damn hard the very first time around.
Right.
I get into this I get into this test, and they're using services that I've never seen before, never heard of. I work in AWS every day. Every day I'm in AWS. And they're using these small, like minuscule services that are kind of like fringe to some extent, like guard duty protection and like there's like 12 guard duty services now, right? That you need to know. It's only getting bigger. And so like we're really putting ourselves at a disadvantage, especially, with these cloud providers creating all this stuff. It's great from a capabilities perspective, from a technology perspective, but at the same time, it's like, man, I don't know if I can keep up with all of this at this
But
point.
is it really? Well, and again, that goes back to the whole, this is why you specialize in something, right? And
Yeah.
this is also why I went into management and didn't stay an engineer, because I did not want to keep up with that shit no more. It kept changing and growing and growing. I'm like, I'm 37 years old. I got a wife and 5 kids.
Yeah.
And I coach football. Like, I cannot keep up with all of this and confidently say I know like X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I will never claim to be there. But I've been in the field long enough that I know how to talk, and when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Or if I don't know something, I'm not afraid to say I don't know something. I'm like,
Right.
let me find that out for you. But yeah, that's why I'll never go back into being solely an engineer because of that. But I
It,
think that we've gotten so far out of. I'm all for efficiency. I think we're way past efficiency now. I think now people are making things complex just to keep a job. Like literally, it is complexity for complexity's sake. It has absolutely nothing to do with being efficient, nothing to do with being secure, and everything to do with, well, I need a job. So let's come up with some new random tool and just say, hey, I designed it. It can do all these cool things. When in reality, you took one tool and turned it into
50. Yeah. It's that's interesting. A buddy of mine, he showed me like a network diagram. Probably shouldn't have showed me. Showed me a network diagram of someone's cloud, right? And he was like, "Hey, is this right? Like, should it be like this?" Didn't have any IPs or anything, but you could obviously see like server A talking to this, this route and going over here, right? And I was looking at it, I'm like, man, this is a really like extravagant way of having a single point of failure. Like,
50.
whoever did this had no idea that if this one thing ever goes down for any reason, the entire network goes down. Like, it's not like one half goes down or the
Hub
other
and
half
spoke.
goes
Okay,
down.
hub and spoke.
Yeah, this guy, it was like the definition of single point of failure. And I was like, man, is it like maybe I'm the stupid one here? Like, was there a reason for this? Like, it was so odd to me. I started to question myself. I'm like, man, maybe I've been taught wrong. Like, because this guy was even like a senior person. He was a senior person, because I asked for the context. I was like, man, tell me, like, who created this thing? He's like, oh yeah, he's been at the company for like 15 years. He decided to go into this cloud. He led the design of it all and everything. I was like, man, you should check some of his other designs, because like this thing, like if he ever retires, he is the only one that knows what's going on.
Yeah, I look at it, and so when I think of enterprise, and I think this is the other thing we really need to get a handle on. You have Azure, Microsoft, that is trying to do all the things, and AWS is now in that realm, right? They're trying to do all the things. Between GuardDuty, CloudTrail, I cannot stand their
Security Lake.
SIM thing. I can't remember what it's
Security
called.
Lake.
It was something else when I worked.
Security Hub.
Yeah, because nothing had a host name. It would give you an AWS ID, and I'm like, oh, no, these
it's
IDs.
worse with Security Lake.
I was like, I have no clue what are you telling me? Oh, well, this AWS ID did this. Did what? What is that AWS ID? Oh, you got to drill down to find out what the host. I'm like,
yeah. You don't like 56 character host IDs that you don't know of, that you did not create,
dude. And so like, but I feel like they're trying to be all the things. Can you just do one thing and do it really well? Instead of doing one thing, you do it semi well, and then you're like, let's do all these other things potentially horribly.
Right.
Like, I just don't understand the premise. Well, no, I do understand the premise. We are a society, a greedy mother. Like, I get it. But at some point, companies have to realize, and that's really what it comes down to, is these companies are like, oh, I'm going to save so much money. Yeah, but no, you're not. Yeah. You realize how much you're going to end up spending once you get ingrained in their little marketplace of isolation.
Yeah. Well, that's where my consulting on the side comes in, right? Then I get to come in and undo a spider web of a mess, and they get to pay me, but they didn't want to pay for the headcount, right?
Yeah,
would have been cheaper if they paid for the headcount.
And that's the other thing. I think the only thing that saves a lot of the only reason MSSPs are still in business, and I don't think they're ever going to go out of business. I think if you're going to make a career in security, find your way into an MSSP, because single companies will always try to cut wages, to cut costs, to find a way out. But when they realize they need security, you can hire an MSSP on a 2-3 year deal for about the cost, and you're going to get a lot more people there. With what us in cybersecurity are asking for, you'll probably pay half the price of what it would take and get more manpower.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I think MSSPs or if you want to make a career in security, get into an MSSP, even if it's a small one, right? If you're going entry level, get into a very small MSSP, like a mom and pop one. I think we got PA Connect here in Pennsylvania. There's a few others. You're not gonna make a lot because they're not, working with huge
Right.
multi-billion-dollar enterprises, but um, you'll get your foot in the door, and you'll be able to
Right.
say you have experience doing X, Y, and Z for X amount of clients, and doing this other third. So I think going into next year and even in the future years, with AI trying to take over, or rather, companies trying to make AI take over, because got to do what you got to do. Companies are going to start outsourcing more and more to MSPs and MSSPs.
Yeah.
If you truly want to make a living in this industry and in IT too, getting into a managed service provider is really where you're going to feel secure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I've never looked at going that route, but hearing you talk about it's a little bit more tempting.
It is both fun and stressful at the same time.
Yeah.
Because if you're in the engineering space or even analyst space or help desk or whatever, you're always going to be learning. You 9 times out of 10, you're always working. You'll have a select set of vendors that you work with, but your clients' needs and troubleshooting issues and things like that are always going to be different. So you're not isolated to, I just got to master this. No, you get to learn and grow and learn different technologies. And if the company, the service provider you work for, decides, hey, we're not supporting, this SIM vendor or this EDR or whatever anymore, we're going to go with this one. Then now you get to learn a whole new tool, and you still get to have all the other tools, right? Because there's always, usually with a good service provider, there's 3 to 4 in their pocket at all times that they're willing to sell and say they support. So you always get to learn something new. So I recommend working for service providers, just because it's a good way to continue to grow, learn, and make a career in the industry. And then you can say, if you ever want to bow out of MSSP work, you can always go back to another company and just be like, hey, I did this for 15 companies at one time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge selling point. I mean, who would turn that down?
Exactly. So, but hey, we're coming to the top of the hour.
Oh, yeah.
So I want you to give your best advice for anybody going into Q4, into next year, how they can either get it. I don't know. You go on, talk for a few minutes. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, look at it like this. What are you lacking right now? What are areas that would make you more valuable in the marketplace going into 2025, going into an area or a time of a little bit of uncertainty, right? Start getting those certifications. There's no reason why you should really only stay with one cloud like AWS, right? You should venture out into Azure. A lot of companies out there are starting to go into Azure. Look at what companies are looking for. Like we talked about it earlier in the conversation, right? A lot of companies tend to put the exact technologies that they're looking for in their job requirements. Look at that, and then look at what you can learn on the side. Look at resources like Cloud Guru, TryHackMe. There's a whole Code Academy. There's a whole bunch of services out there that are free. I just named some paid ones, but even those paid ones, couple $100, and you get to have a playground for yourself to go and learn and specialize in an area to get into a field that will ultimately change you and your family's life. And of course, check out the podcast, Security Unfiltered. Cool. Are you coming back?
My layout. I was like, where did my layout go? Why can't I change it back? What's going on here?
I was like, do I have this podcast now?
Man. There's so much going on. Continue to learn, grow within the industry. If you don't do that, if you're not willing to do that, you're never going to make it in the industry.
Yeah. That's the unique thing about security. You have to constantly be learning. If you're not learning, you're going to fall so far behind so quickly that eventually you will become obsolete, and they will get rid of you, and you won't be able to find a new job.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, but saying that, look, hey, it's top of the hour. I gotta travel tomorrow, so we're not gonna go too far over. I'm gonna end it here. I love you all. You're all my warriors. You're all my family. Come back next week for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour. We'll have a brand new, amazing guest. Talk to you then.